We're back, baby. It's the Horns Up Talking Texas podcast. Fisher, DJ, Nikki, Snacks, Kreider. Good to see you, my friend. Is that a new Longhorns hat you have on?
It's actually my oldest Longhorns hat that I own.
I haven't seen that one.
I used to rock it on the sideline at UT game.
Oh, nice. And for those who forget, Nicky was a walk-on his sophomore season at the wide receiver position. All right, transfers crazy, recruiting crazy, early signing period this week, so that's crazy exciting. Speaking of crazy,
So
so we're
crazy.
still crazy. We're expecting a lot of news from the Longhorns as we've had throughout this entire season. Sark has really done a masterful job, I feel, over the last couple of years, both in the portal and both in normal recruiting. You have to be honest with we have to be honest with ourselves. One is just as important as the other these days. You have to
Oh,
be
yeah.
50 parts one, 50 parts the other.
I mean, honestly, nowadays, I feel like the transfer portal is even more important because you're getting guys who are ready to step up right away.
Mhm.
I mean, you look at Adonai Mitchell, who's, one of the bright spots of this Longhorn roster this year, and, he's a transfer.
Mhm.
You had Show Carter, who's a transfer who made an impact. And there's guys all around, left and right, that get stuff done for us. And, I think we're in the mix for a lot of really big names at, top of each position that can be immediate game changers and try to up their draft stock. I mean, you look at USC's quarterback, and he won the Heisman right after he transferred. And, all these quarterbacks that are going back and forth. I mean, Dylan Gabriel, he took care of business against us. That's the only loss that we had. Transferred to OU. Now he's transferring to Oregon. So I think it's, if not equally, more important sometimes. It's
Mhm.
it's like in Major League Baseball when like you've got your homegrown talent that is ready to roll, but you just have a few spots, like your DH position, maybe a corner outfield bat, maybe like a front of the line rotation guy that you just need to get in there right away that, could just be on a 1-year deal or could, prove to be successful for 2 years. And at the end of the day, your ultimate goal is to reach the tippy top and win the championship. And obviously, you wanna build a program where guys are gonna wanna come in each day and each year, from the high school level on up and stay with the program, but you have to get guys that are ready to roll right away.
Mhm. Yeah, Andrew Mukuba, sorry, from Clemson, the
Clemson.
DB. Yeah,
He's
is
from
is a
Austin
guy.
originally too, so that should he's right in our backyard.
Yeah, Makuba is a guy that we have to have on our radar, especially with we have a lot of veteran talent, which is great for our upcoming preview, and we'll discuss in a couple moments against Washington in the Sugar Bowl because their strongest position is the wide receiver group. But ultimately, those guys are going to need to be replaced. We also have guys that have entered the portal from our standpoint. Jalen Catalon, who's probably the most disappointing player, unfortunately for us this season, he's once again entered the transfer portal. BJ Allen's in the transfer portal. Xavion Bryce is in the transfer portal. All DBs, and sorry, Larry Turner Gooden's also
Yeah.
in the transfer portal. So we have
The Larry Turner good one kind of stung for me because I felt like last year in his recruiting, he was all in on Texas, and it was like we celebrated when he finally
yeah.
committed to us. And I mean, he's like our neighbor. He's listed as Playa del Rey, and we're Marina del Rey, Santa Monica guys. Um, but yeah, man, I mean, like as a freshman, it's like, come on, man, stick it out one more year, see if you can get a chance to get up on the roster. But it wasn't gonna fit, wasn't gonna fit. At the end of the day, Quan always says if they don't want to be here, we don't want them there anyway. I think the
Mhm.
one that stings for you most is Casey Kane, though, right?
Yeah, I really liked Casey Can. I thought he had potential. Just, he couldn't see the field, and as your boy Jonte Cook this season, Sark runs tight sets, man. Like it's tough to really crack that rotation of the wide receiver group. He loves Worthy, he loves Mitchell, as he should. Both those guys are first round caliber players, and obviously Jordan Whittington, who's a go to security blanket guy. And at that standpoint, he's those three wide receivers working in there. He has his running backs. We get a lot of checkdowns, a lot more checkdowns, ironically, than we saw last year than we had with Bijan. They're getting worked into the receiving game. So that means Keelan Robinson, Jatavian Sanders, our tight end, pretty much acts as another wide receiver. And then Gunnar Helm's been getting a lot of action this year, too. So it's tough to crack that group. I wish Casey Kane was sticking it out, but I guess he really didn't do enough necessarily to get that edge and really see the field. Like Savion Red did whatever he could to see the field, and now he's getting minutes where
Yeah.
it counts. So that one stung for me for sure. But other than that, nothing too crazy. It's the name of the game, like you're saying. Dylan Gabriel, who handed us, a loss, at OU, and by and large had the job next year. or so many of us think from the outside. Jackson Arnold, the incumbent freshman, is supposed to be the prince that was the next prince that was promised for the OU heritage at the quarterback position. He's going to take over for Bo Nix, who came in third in the Heisman, and
Yeah.
a Ducks team that was one win away from making the college football playoff. So anything could happen. Guys can always be moving. We have to be prepared for guys to leave for us. But we mentioned Makuba, who you said is an Austin kid. He's leaving Clemson, and we're in the lead. He's also visiting Oregon. But Trey Moore, UTSA guy, one
Yep.
of your also fellow brethren, an edge guy. We can't have enough depth at that position.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, and I think if you look at how we did this year on the D line, we were number 1 in Big 12, number 4 rushing defense in the nation. We put defensive player of the year in the Big 12, a guy who finished in, top 10 of Heisman voting, first team All-American, Vondre Sweat, Byron Murphy, like all these guys are proving the success of what we're being able to do on the D line and win in the trenches. And I think if you're a defensive lineman, at a smaller program that's looking to up your draft stock and, potentially become an All-American and head to the SEC and play against the cream of the crop, then you have to be looking at Texas because, we've been able to put out significant guys to go to the draft and put them in for the best possible success that they can have. And so, a guy like Trey Moore is definitely interesting. There's a guy out of Florida too that, I think that could be, a really big piece for us. I think he's taking a visit. I can't pronounce his name, to be honest, but at the end of the day, like, we need to be able to win these these battles in the trenches, and to continue to do that. Guys like
Xavier Filsaime, the safety.
Say again?
Xavier Filsaime, the safety.
No, I was talking about the edge rusher from Florida. I
Oh,
forget his name.
apologies.
I'll
All
look it up.
good. Yeah, you look it up. But yeah, the Trey Moore, he's got 14 sacks at UTSA, and they played some good competition. Like, it's not like he's coming from like a JUCO school. No offense to JUCO guys, but this guy, UTSA is a solid program, and again, he put up there 14 sacks is a lot, and that's a great guy to have in the rotation next year with Burke, with Finkley, with Sorrell, with Anthony Hill, guys that can really get after the pass rusher. So
It's
if we can,
Princely Uman Million. Uman Millen. Yeah.
well, he's supposed to be I think he's supposed to be a decent draft prospect. So if we could add him to the mix, again with the Clemson safety, again with Xavier Filsaime, that's the trick that that's gonna be a fun one to say too. If he ends up flipping from Florida, that's who I thought you were talking about, because he's not a transfer. He's a guy that's committed to Florida. He's a 5-star safety.
Yeah, no, that's big too. He's taking a visit this weekend in Austin. Lot of big visits. So, I mean, at the end of the day, too, we always have to keep the guys that are committed to us. It's not finalized till they sign, not till it's on the dotted line. Luckily, signing day is coming up, and then we have another one coming up in February. Dominic McKinney is another guy that we were really high on as well, that committed to A&M, and now there's some instability with their recruiting process and their defensive line. So I think he's reopening up his recruitment a little bit. It hasn't decommitted yet, but from what I'm hearing, he's taking in-home visits, and Texas is right there at the top. I mean, that'd be huge if we're able to add these guys. But yeah, I mean, you want to be that program that just is able to turn guys in and out left and right, where it's not like, okay, we have a lull coming up because we lost to Vondre Sweat. No, like, you want to be like Bama, you want to be like Georgia, where each and every year you're putting out 5 or 6, first, second, third round draft picks. I mean, Bama's got 5 All-Americans this year, and I think next year they can probably do the exact same thing. And the year after that, exact same thing.
And it's not even like 5 All-Americans at the same spot. Like, it's not like their offense is just dominating. They have Dallas Turner, they have Kool-Aid McKinstry, they have J.C. Latham, they have so many talented, they have Chris Braswell, they have so many talented guys at so many different positions. And I think this is the first year in a long time the Texas Longhorns got to see that. So, Ryan Wingo, who's signed with us, the wide receiver spot from St. Louis, he's coming in to visit this weekend with Colin Simmons, who's been such a massive get for us after getting Anthony Hill last year. He's another guy. I'm sure he's looking at this like, okay, Hill's ahead of me, Burke's probably ahead of me still, but I could work in with Sorrell, I could work in with Finkley. We'll see what happens if Trey Moore signs. But kind of inversely to the wide receiver group that we were talking about, the defense rotates so much.
Yeah.
So many guys get to see the field, and they kind of ride the hot hand, which is, if you're a talented freshman like Colin Simmons, you look at the impact Anthony Hill's had for us this year, and you got to go, okay, that could be me next year.
Yeah, I was literally just about to say that. You took the words from my mouth. I mean, and I think that's why we had so much success this year against the run, is because our guys were so fresh, right? You're not gassed. When you're playing against a team that's just going to run it down your throat for chunk yardage, right? 6, 7 yards, maybe they're breaking off 20-yard runs every other play. That gasses you as a defense. And so for them to be able to plug the run, rotate a guy in and out there, plug the run, rotate another guy in and out there. It's huge. And I think Anthony Hill led all freshmen this year in snaps on the defensive side of the ball, which is huge. And look, I think we've seen enough. We know he's going to be a star next year, and the year after that, he'll probably be a first round draft pick. But you're right. If Colin Simmons is looking at a Texas defense and taking, it's a different position, but taking Anthony Hill's trajectory kind of as like a similar path for himself, then that's all the juice you need to go out there and just recruit your butt off if you're also looking for guys to be on your team and help create this iron defense.
Yeah, I mean, look, this defense was fantastic this year, and it's going to the SEC next year, and it proved well, against Alabama. We may see Alabama again if things go correctly in the national championship for us. But and then hopefully again, if we get them round 2, that we could still take care of business. But if you're an incoming freshman, like we say all the time, or an incoming transfer, and you see this Texas defense, it's now a group that you're not like, okay, I'm going to save this defense. I can be a part of a great defense. We've moved past the point of like, all right, you're going to be the guy that resurrects the defensive side of the football for the Texas Longhorns. Right. No, now you're a guy that's going to contribute to a national championship caliber defense. Right. That's what we are. Like, whether we win the national championship, whether we win the Sugar Bowl or not, this Texas defense is a national championship caliber defense. Hence 100%. Why they were put by the committee in the college football playoff.
100%. And what's funny is that I think for a time we were always like saying, and the Quan would say the same thing, where we're trying to be in the mix for these big 5-star recruits, whether it's Arch Manning or, Quinn Ewers or just guys that make huge impacts in recruiting and are big names sought after by every program. And the recruiting pitch was always like, don't you want to be the guy that brings Texas back? Don't you want to be the guy to start the revolution, right? Like, I think that was even part of like the recruiting pitch in like 2018 or 2019, where it was like Revolution 18 or I don't know what it was, but that like start the revolution or bring Texas back, essentially. Yeah. And we're way past that point now. It's, don't you want to be part of this Texas team that is starting to dominate, heading into the SEC, that's in the college football playoff. I mean, Bama is not the type of school, Georgia's not the type of school to be like, don't you want to bring Georgia back? Don't you want to bring Bama back? No, it's like, come join excellence. And that's what we want. At the end of the day, it's funny that we even thought of ourselves that way, but look, I mean, hopefully this isn't just like a one-off year and we stumble into the SEC conference. I don't think that's going to be the case, but we got to continue to take care of business. And, this is step 1 right here. I mean, I love that we're in the midst of the college football playoff, but still recruiting our butts off. And that's how it should be, and that's why Coach Sark is AP Coach of the Year.
Yeah, 100%. Like, you have to be fully in the mix of like, again, like you can't just be unfortunately focused on the game coming up. This is just such a massive part. It's not the NFL. Like, where, okay, there's an offseason, there's a draft, and there's scheduled blocks. Like, it's pretty much year round as recruiting. So even if you're a team like us, like, you can't take your foot off the gas. And there's
use it to your advantage too. Use the fact that we're in this, like the guys that are coming to visit, show them a little bit. Be like, oh yeah, this is how we're game planning this week for Washington in the college football playoff. That game's in 3 weeks.
Yeah, 100%. Speaking of that, we're going to go through position groups as we get closer daily. Let's just start with the biggest one, right? Their wide receiver group. Rome Odunze is fantastic. Jalen Polk is also a guy that's probably not going to go in the first round like Rome Odunze, but he could be a guy, honestly, that does slip into late end of the first round, but he'll definitely be a day 2 pick. And Jalen McMillan's a guy who missed half the season, but he came back strong, had 9 receptions for over 100 yards against the Oregon Ducks. Michael Penix Jr. gave Jaden Daniels as close of a run in the Heisman as we've seen in a long time. And he's gotten a lot, of the spotlight this year for the Washington Huskies, but it's really this 3-headed receiver duo that's going to be in line to give our defense some fits. We know how strong our defensive line is. We know how strong the run game is. But there have been questions, whether it be Ryan Watts' health, whether it be the youth we have on the defensive backfield with Terrence Brooks and Malik Muhammad being arguably our number 2 and number 3 corners. Our safeties having excellent games sometimes and then sometimes kind of falling flat. So to me, this is probably the biggest position group battle and the breaking point of the Sugar Bowl. asking to shut down Roma Junze, who's a pro, right? Who's a 6'3",
Yeah.
220-pound monster, and is not only just so great with the long ball, but can break tackles and can really run a lot of routes. Asking to shut him down and cancel him out completely can be wishful thinking, but really sticking it to me to those other two guys and having, guys like Gavin Holmes step up and having Barron and having Thompson step up and really create some help, locking down Polk and locking down McMillan as much as we possibly can. They're limited. That's going to be a real key for me in the Sugar Bowl.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a lot of inexperience out there in the
Mhm.
secondary, a lot of youth, and they've stepped up. At the end of the day, they have. But I there needs to be a solid game plan to corral this offense because I mean, look, we've seen it. Like Penix can let the ball go, and they can have a 500 yardage day.
Mhm.
What I want to do is I want to force them to run the ball, and they've
Mhm.
got a great running back in Dylan Johnson as well. I mean that guy rushed for over 1,000 yards, had 14 total touchdowns.
Mhm.
I think that he's a guy that could be a game changer for them, and they want to be a team that can prove that they can run the ball against this Texas defense too. But if I'm us, I'm trying to shut down the pass as much as possible in the looks that I'm giving where, maybe I'm rolling out a fourth defensive back out there and making them run the ball because I trust
Mhm.
our front seven. I really do. I
Yeah.
think that those guys can put up and look, Penix isn't the most mobile quarterback. He definitely, can rush the ball, but it's not like he's the type of guy that Jaden Daniels is.
No.
Penix on the year has negative 18 rushing yards. So like he really hasn't rushed the ball at all. He's a pocket passer. So, the struggles that we've had all season long were with guys who can also run the ball and throw the ball. Dylan Gabriel, our only loss, rushed all over us. So if we can just keep him in the pocket, I have faith in our defensive line to create pressure, because I don't think that their O-line has seen a defensive line like ours this far.
Mhm.
The pressure that
Yeah.
we create is nothing compared to what they've seen in the Pac-12 or
Yeah.
all the way around. Nothing they've seen in the Pac-12 is compared to what we have. So, I think that'll give our secondary somewhat of a break on these receivers, but yeah, I mean, anytime you're going up against pros, like it's a tall task, but you gotta rise to the occasion because at the end of the day, this is good game footage for you to become a pro one day.
Yes, and I again, like, I think it's a really good point. We talk about our DBs, Jalen Ford, if he does drop back in coverage, I know he's a linebacker, obviously, but he has to really step up. But Terrence Brooks is probably the biggest key. He's becoming, as I think more and more about this game, he's becoming the player I'm keying in on. He really had a fantastic season. He in 43 targets this season, he only allowed 18 receptions, which is good for 42%. He led the team in pass breakups, or sorry, was second in pass breakups, behind Muhammad, behind Thompson. And he really had a fantastic season. He had 3 picks, and he's only a sophomore, which we're so happy about that we get to have him back next year. But he may be tasked, depending on Watt's health, with guarding a guy like Rome, or with
Yep.
getting, or finding himself in single coverage with a guy like Polk, who is again a professional receiver. So yeah, these guys
Yeah,
are not
and
these
and
guys
we're
are
missing Derek Williams for the first half because of that targeting call, so
exactly. It's a
doesn't
it's
help.
a it's a looming penalty. So guys like Taft is going to have to step up. Thompson, Barron, again, who I've mentioned, like this is really going to take a team effort. They're going to throw 7 different kinds of smoke with us. Their tight ends can catch the ball. Their fourth receiver can catch the ball. But this real 3-headed monster of Polk, McMillan, and Roma Junze is going to be super dangerous. And I think it's getting glossed over in the media a lot with the hype of Penix and the hype of this Texas team, the excitement that Texas is back in the college football playoff, or isn't it? Sorry, in the college football back in general, but in the college football playoff for the first time. I think this 3-headed monster is being overlooked.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think if we're smart, we're not overlooking it, but, I mean, if any time that you got a player on your team that's mentioned to potentially be a top 10 draft pick, top 15 draft pick the following year, you gotta pay close attention, and Rome is gonna find himself on a team next year, and make a lot of money and potentially be, a top fantasy draft pick for a lot of people. I mean, I think he's that talented. He can right away be first receiver taken, maybe second behind Marvin Harrison Jr. But still, I mean, it's gonna be an interesting task for our guys to step up, but I think we'll rise to the occasion.
Yeah, me too. I would love to see some sort of double. I think Muhammad is a little too inexperienced to be guarding him, but I would love, like, if Watts is healthy, that's all Watts. But if he's lingering a little bit, throw Watts out there, maybe on Polk, and let it some kind of duo of Brooks and Thompson, or Brooks and Barron take
Yeah.
care of Rome. I think
And
it'd
on
be
the flip side as well, I mean, our receivers versus their DBs, I mean, it's gonna be the same thing for them. They've got a Muhammad on their side of the ball too, who's a DB,
yeah.
interestingly enough. it's the most common name in the world, but it is what it is. But
Thanks,
no, I mean, at
McLovin.
the same time, like we've got two guys right now that could potentially go at the end of the first, early second. Even Jay Witt might find himself getting drafted, in the fourth or fifth round. So they've got a tall task as well, and it's a different type of task because I think what they're used to in the Pac-12 is one wide receiver that can just beat you deep, mobile quarterbacks. With us, man, I mean, we've got so many ways to create space for these wide receivers, whether it's screen plays, bubbles, reverses, jet sweeps, slants. Like you go with the deep ball. I mean, I just think that there's so many different route combos and trees that they run here that are unique to college football. I mean, these guys really carry themselves as professionals. I mean, say what you will about Xavier Word, these drops. He's a tremendous route runner, and of course, he's got blazing speed. But at the end of the day, I mean, this should be a really fun battle between both position groups.
I agree. I think, yeah, I think all the compliments we give to Sark, and about creating these routes and creating these plays and putting our team in that position. The Washington Huskies do the exact same thing, right? They are always running really creative routes. Kalen DeBoer is such a good head coach, and you always find guys like Rome, Polk, and McMillan. They're always using their speed and their ability to really move, and they're always running it like not like the Dolphins, but like kind of similar to us, right?
Yeah,
Like we're always have guys in motion, and I saw a lot of that when I saw them up close and personal at USC. So I think it's almost, yes, our DBs have to go up against their wide receivers on the field, but a battle of whose receiving group can really dominate more and who can get more creative and gutsy in the play calling, I think is also another one that we'll have to dissect as we keep going forward. But we'll see you guys tomorrow. Hopefully some more announcements happen in the recruiting trail. We'll cover some more positions. Maybe we'll do a little defensive, offensive line tomorrow, which will be pretty fun. And keep in mind, we still have some big guests to come before the matchup on New Year's Day in New Orleans at the Sugar Bowl. Fisher, DJ Nicky Snacks Crider, with his oldest Longhorns hat on his head from back on the sidelines. Me, I'm rocking a random Seattle Supersonics hat. But I will be back in my Longhorns gear tomorrow. We'll see you guys. Get your horns up. Hook 'em, baby.